Deleted session, January 1st, 1973. Now, we will begin easily enough, so bear with me. I told you that as you considered moving, your attitudes would suddenly become quite clear, and other issues would be deeply involved. The idea of mobility in one direction and of moving would cause all of your other ideas to move. I will mention some issues and then come back to them. For some time, Ruber felt he was a failure as a wife and as a writer. He did not see you succeeding either. Conditions mentioned far earlier made communication difficult, and he brooded. The point of mobility, represented moving ahead in his work, or not moving ahead. The apartment became a symbol. It was all right for the aspiring writer. If, however, he could not achieve the kind of success he wanted, then he might as well have the trappings. Rob noted, I was quite surprised the other day when Jane told me that our two apartments were okay to her if she was a writer, but not all right for a psychic, especially one who was becoming well-known and was visited by all kinds of people. She also told me that to her the idea of stairs represented success and failure, up and down. Seth said he is quite correct in saying, Rob noted, today. Seth said he denied to some extent an important aspect, Rob noted, of himself. Seth said the problem was in consciously hiding the conflict from himself and in deciding upon a status quo. Status quo can never be maintained to begin with. Some of this should be clear, and is, I know, but we will put it together, and I will clear some issues for you. The ESP book was meant to be a book, one book. In the beginning, he did not want to publish the material, if you recall, not because he did not like the material, but because then, at least, he understood that for him, assembling it during his creative hours was not fulfilling his kind of creative need. Rob noted, yes, I recall clearly urging Jane to publish the material. Most regrettable now, of course. A serious error, for at that time she instinctively knew what was best for her. I want her to go back to relying upon her instincts and intuitions. They said the creativity was in the sessions because he felt a responsibility to the work and because of another publication, a hardcover book, he consented to the set material. The acclaim in course of a tour helped revive him initially, and he began ideas of a novel. It had a psychic basis. Ten wanted another psychic book. Ruber objected enough to refuse to do a series like the Casey books, but tried to compromise with the Dream Set book, which also involved him with the typing of records. You needed the money, he felt. He tried to do a narrative, and used, for example, descriptive abilities, a valiant attempt to do two different things in one book. Before all of this, as the very first symptoms began, before the ESP book, he was already deeply frightened by the novel rejections. The Playboy rejections after they raised his hopes. The poetry book, acceptable that fell through with Continental, and what he felt to be your joint deteriorating relationship. There were also financial considerations. He had only lately freed himself from a part-time job. To refuse a psychic book that was definite, to try for another novel with no assurance, seemed foolhardy. At the same time, his age bothered him. The young writer, aspiring, was no longer so young. At the same time, he began to doubt his writing abilities. Perhaps he had overjudged his talents. Following the set material, requests came that showed quite clearly he was regarded as a psychic. Psychics helped people. I told him to stay away from spiritualist groups. He has a strong sense of responsibility and loyalty. He avoided being a psychic personality, in quotes, in grand terms. I am digressing here to bring you another issue. The strong responsibility he always felt toward his writing ability. He naturally felt toward the psychic ability, but without the necessary sense of discrimination, since he didn't realize what such activities involved. As a writer, for example, alone, he does not feel a responsibility to write every kind of book possible. Gothic, mysterious, science fiction, poetry essays, street novels. There is no reason why he should, though he has the ability to write any of them well. So he need not feel that he has a responsibility to be a psychic healer, a clairvoyant, a medium, a psychic psychologist, and so forth. Though he has the ability to be any of these. He did, however, feel that responsibility. Conflicts arose because his responsibilities clashed. Other quite ordinary issues were involved, some fears he did not want to admit. At times, he was convinced that he had made a failure of his life so far with you and his work. You were involved in his attitudes. He felt that he had no right to try to do creative, in quotes, work that might not pay. He felt also that you were jealous of his own writing, but not of the psychic work, this being further in the past. When you want a break, let me know. Ross said, okay. They said the dream book, incidentally, in different form, far different, will be published. So will adventures. And when he is in a better position to evaluate his adventures, he did not want dreams published. Adventures initially was a way of leading him back into writing, and toward aspects and rich bed. It, Ralph noted, adventures, they said, also served to regenerate his creative abilities, which had died in dreams. 7 saved him from another dreams. Ralph noted, book. They said, and also provided him with a contract. My books will provide a different kind of accelerated creativity that can be achieved in no other way, and that will leave him freedom to pursue another kind of creativity that can come only from him, and not from me. This could not have developed in the beginning, however. Do you want a break? Ralph said, yes, I guess so. They said, you do not have to take notes here. I am trying to bring you up to date consecutively and intertwine all events so that you can follow. Now, last summer, or rather the one before the flood, Ralph noted in June 1972. They said improvements were obvious. Ralph noted in 1971. They said the reasons you should know. The pressure of the dream book was gone. he was not doing something he did not want to do. The move, Rob noted across the hall into our second apartment, they said, meant mobility. Your relationship began to improve to an important degree. He was between books, just having money from Seth Speaks. There were several things you had still not learned, however, that you have now learned. The relationship would be very good, then, but some old characteristic response of ours would occur now and then, and frighten him. He began to move toward a new contract, which meant adventures, he felt, rather than rich bed. Initially there was great enthusiasm with both, but rich bed was his baby, and adventures a method of learning and an initial way of releasing pent-up creative energy. It had a purpose, and has. It meant, however, more creative time spent in examining the psychic experience. At the same time, he hoped Tom will take rich bed, knowing he wouldn't. Unconsciously, Ten sensed that dilemma, so he senses this one. 7 was the answer. In the meantime, your being home also meant that he was face to face with you. You could see his condition, and as given earlier, he tried to hide from you at times most of all. After Seth Speaks was duly accepted, and while he was working on adventures and rich bed initially, then he improved. The creative energy splashed over psychically in some poetry and in summary. Following that period, he began to realize that adventures for the present had served its purpose. Again, he had another psychic book and hopes of a contract, and Tom did not want rich bed. 7 was the answer, but only if 7 led where it was supposed to lead. In the meantime, there was the matter of a tool, or not, for Seth Speaks, and speaking engagements. He felt that if he accepted and became known as a psychic, in those terms, his chances of becoming known as a writer were lost, and beyond recovery. He would be pigeonholed as a psychic. It was for those reasons that his improvement deteriorated. Now the stairs represent going up and down on a treadmill, and getting nowhere. He seemed unable to move in any direction. This had to do with your apartment, which actually suited him fine for some time. But other dissatisfactions not faced were projected there also, and exaggerated, while there seemed to be nothing he could do about it. He also felt that if you were a success as an artist, he could write what he deemed pleased, hid that anger, and felt extremely disloyal. He did not feel free then to take the chance, financially or creatively, to write, in quotes, a literary book. And yet, whole foundations of his being in this life are devoted to that particular aspect of art. Good theorists are not necessarily good practitioners, and good practitioners are not necessarily good theorists. Yet, good theory is practical. Ruber has provided himself with a small laboratory. Tell him to think of his class that way. Seeing that group of people week after week, he is able to work with them, follow their progress, and put theory into practice. That is sufficient. No one can be adequately helped in 1 or 2 sessions, and it is not his responsibility or mine to answer personally the millions of people who need help, or even the relatively few who write him. To some extent, it is his responsibility to make the material accessible, so that using it others may learn how to help themselves. The class gives me the opportunity to speak directly to individuals, and that experience is automatically used in my books. Robert's personality is not one that can be held down to specific instances, but, Rob noted, is one, Seth said, to involve theories that can be used by many. Now give us a moment, a long one. As you suspect, there is no conflict between the psychic and the creative with him, but he declared from the beginning that his own work would be swallowed. This has not proven true, for many reasons, some having to do with development. His own work was not focused upon as it should have been to his way of seeing things. Now he must go ahead and take his chances. He speaks of success. What he means is the production of a work of his own in those terms that he considers art, an accomplishment whether or not it brings financial success. He was angry that the psychic work was bringing financial success, to some extent, while wanting the money. The full development of his creative abilities, however, needed the psychic development. This ability would not. The full-blown thing could not have come much earlier, but his rage did not take that into account. Dialogues could not be written by anyone without Rupert's experience. Adventures would have been an error, if pursued further now. Later, with greater understanding and with a backlog of other work that contains him, it will be an excellent book. Raise your fingers. Mobility seemed blocked in all directions then. He well knew at times that adventures was in part a ruse to content him, and assure him of a contract while I began my book. But he is afraid of taking the plunge on his own now. He was also afraid that you would be angry. Bill McDaniel, coming at this time of year, did remind him of the first session and the ESP book and the tooth incident, caused physically by the sinuses, was a message that the time was crucial, a crisis. He had to say no, now, and move ahead in his own area. I suggested then that he call 10. There will be no difficulties. I suggest immediately that you make symbolic changes in Rupert's room, at once and throughout your place, as you desire. He knows you will be here for a while. Ralph said, "What do you mean a few weeks, a few months, or what? I would thought we would soon be moving." They said, "The mobility should begin here, now, while you begin looking about. Simply so you experience mobility immediately on two important levels. The work area through the phone call and the decision, and your immediate present environment. Give us a moment." Robert's condition deteriorated after the meeting with Eleanor. The situation brought into focus, you see, the entire problem. Siegel's middle-aged lady focused it further. The middle-aged lady was mentioned as middle-aged, and as a psychic, poet, and science fiction writer, a turning of the ways in that the psychic books were mentioned, but no books of poetry, which gave impetus to dialogues. Eleanor held out the bait of Richbath's publication. Rupert wanted to plunge into it, but was afraid to not take the money for adventures instead. Hence, the same problem in new and more dangerous form. Most of this was very conscious at various times, but your view of suburbia helped to bring it into focus. Robert will use his creative ability in fiction yet, in a way that he could not have otherwise, to bring home the reality and dimension of human personality. All books will continue. He felt trapped and saw no way out. Even now, he is afraid of turning down the money, of letting that much work go. But he finally sees that that is his answer. Now, I have an important suggestion, to which I hope you will acquiesce, and it is important. You must really form a letter, a nice one, thanking people for their interest, explaining that for now private sessions are not given for individuals. These should be sent out to unanswered correspondence. Robert should devote himself to what he wants to write in his time. I will produce my books. There will be others. Period. For now, let classes continue. Make the changes I suggested. Have Robert send dialogue to those places he has in mind. Rob asked, should he write to Eleanor? They said, write Eleanor and explain the situation fully and honestly. Each individual has within him guidelines meant to lead him in the ways best for him. You cannot compare yourself with others. Robert's own feelings, therefore, are those guidelines. They may be different at various times, but they can be trusted. Robert's creative ability is his for a reason. It was meant to be used, as well as his psychic abilities were. There are unknown dimensions, then, to his own work that will begin to materialize, and that would be buried had he continued to produce simply what he thought he should produce. And now, do you have questions? Rob asked, then we are still to think that all those reasons connected with the symptoms that you gave in the past still apply, along with these present ones given in this station. That all of those contributed something to have the overall problems? They said they do indeed, but transformations in them would occur. Your lack of communication was important and aggravated the problem. Rob asked, is there anything now that you would like to say that he won't let you say? They said, no, there is not. Rob said, I just mean, is he open now to what you may or can say? They said, I believe I have answered your question. Rob said, okay. They said, there are other elements not particularly mentioned in the background, but they are not crucial points. He felt he had lost his direction. Spontaneously feeling free to write what he wants to will also release him psychically. Ralph said, when I used the pendulum Sunday afternoon and found that about the reasons for Jane's symptoms, it seemed like I would ask questions like that before, but nothing happened. There weren't any results. They said, because neither of you were willing to take the chance earlier, nor did you feel financially secure enough to do so. You were both willing to put up with the situation. The idea of physically moving automatically brought these issues into the light, and you helped Robert immensely. He would never have tried completely to write the book, but he could have struggled nearly halfway through. Rob said, you mean adventures? They said, I do indeed, but both of you had to acquiesce, you see, or for him it would not have worked. This time he believes you, because the suggestion came from you. He feels free to be a psychic only when he is not labeled one exclusively. Do you have any questions? Rob said, I guess not. Seth said, I suggest then that everything I have said be put into practice immediately. Then I bid you a fond good evening. Rob said, Thank you very much, Seth.